Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Freedom Tech Friday, a live and interactive show taking place every Friday at 9 a.m. Eastern and 2 p.m. UK time across the Ungovernable feed. Each week, we dig into the latest in freedom tech, including Bitcoin, Monero, encrypted messengers, and privacy tools, and of course, everything in between. Essentially, if there's a news item, tool, or topic that can help you take back some control in today's digital panopticon, then we want to talk about it. This show and the topics we covered are powered by Freedom.tech, a daily news desk that uses AI to monitor hundreds of sources so we can continue to bring you the signal each and every week. My name's Q&A and I'm head of customer experience at Foundation. And as always, I am joined by my good friend Max, the head honcho of the Ungovernable Empire, and Seth, who is COO at Cake Wallet. Freedom Tech Friday is live and interactive, so you can help steer the conversation by commenting live questions and sharing it with friends. Top support for the last show covering our incredible new website, more on that shortly, at ungovernable.network, for those of you that are new to it, comes from Ape Mithrandir, who sent 0.10174304596 XMR and said, awesome new website. I really hope this means my XMR boosts get read out now. Well, Ape, there's living proof for you. Thank you for your support. And if you have no idea what Ape's talking about, head to ungovernable.network/V4V and you can see the boost wall. You can get involved. And if you do send in some sats or some Moneros, just like Nostagang just has, perfect. Look at that. Nostagang just did it as I said it. You get a special feature at the top of the page. Look at that. Nostagang, thank you very much. That was almost biblical timing. I'm very, very happy about that. And I promise Nostagang, I didn't prime them to do that. So thank you very much. Although it did disappear pretty quickly. So while you guys are chatting, I'm going to go and make sure it stays up a little bit longer. Ape, thank you for your support. Nostagang, thank you also for your support. That was a perfect time. I'm really happy about that. Let's dive into the show. Matt, Seth, how's it going? You had a good week?
It's been a good week for sure. Been an absolute blast across all fronts. Good time cake stuff. Good time AI cake stuff, which I'm excited to dive into today. Yeah, it's been good.
Yeah, good here as well, except we've been eating lettuce for the last week and a half and nothing more, because I'm really worried that what Seth is going to tell us is going to make me spend money that I shouldn't be spending on some hardware. So other than being malnourished, everything is good.
Yes, I'm also very fearful this show is going to have the exact same outcome for myself. So
yes,
I might need to give the wife the credit card to keep under lock and key somewhere before. I should have done it before the show, really, because it's
keep
too
it
easy
in
to
cold storage.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, no guest this week, as you can see, and it's just going to be the three of us chatting. Seth leading the way. Every week we talk about taking back control of your money, your messages, your identity, you name it. Take back some control on today's digital panopticon. It's literally in the intro. And today we're going to add something else to that list, your intelligence, quite literally, the AI that you use. It will come as no surprise to anybody listening or watching that we've all gone down the AI rabbit hole in varying degrees of severity in the past 6 months. And I think Seth very much takes the crown for chief clanker at the moment at the Ungovernable Empire, and we're going to find out why very shortly. But Seth, what's been going on? What have you been buying? We're going to do a little bit of show and tell, but I guess let's just kind of start at the very beginning. Like, you've been on a journey, a very steep rabbit hole in the course of the last probably maybe 2 to 3 months, if probably less than that. Maybe
it's not been long.
Yeah, it's not
Yeah.
been long. Seth was the laggard, the AI laggard, and I hope he's okay with me saying that. And he's quickly leapfrogged me and all my clankers to be like the well. I was going to suggest saving. Oh my god, I need another coffee.
He's the AI addict.
I was going to suggest changing his name to Seth for AI because like he's been bitten hard here.
It's getting close. It's getting close to that.
Yeah, absolutely. So walk us through it, Seth. Like, I guess set the scene, and then let's get into what you've been up to lately.
Yeah, it's been quite the rabbit hole. This is my nature, though. I feel like I find something interesting, and that has like the ability to be something that's really important for freedom, or just really fun to play around with, especially if those two things overlap. And I go in deep, but. Like you said, it's really weird because I was not the early adopter of AI. Like in general, absolutely not. Even among our more cautious circles, like you said, like I feel like the three of us were relatively late adopters too. But Q was first, started driving on that, then Max, and I fell much later. But it was really interesting because I very much thought it was just not good enough, kept trying it. It was never matching what I felt like it needed to be useful. But Vic, founder Cake, my boss, he's been pushing hard on AI stuff for a long time. Like he was very, very early on the OpenClaw train specifically, and that's what kind of opened up his eyes. And he started running his own models on Mac Studios that he had. He already had them for work, so he started with that, and then bought more before the AI boom obliterated the price of RAM, unfortunately. So he got them at a reasonable price, at least in today's terms. But he got started really on this super early. So he was running things locally, LM Studio, Olama, testing these things out with OpenClaw really early on. And that was the start of our kind of local AI push at Cake, but was long before I actually got into this. I think we've talked a little bit about like I first really started diving into AI probably 3 months ago, if that. I would say in general was when I started doing it, and that was just the normal Claude Code work, like the normal route. But about a month ago now, there was a big shift in the open weight model space, which is models that you can actually run at home, some of which are what we would call open source. Some of them have like commercially restricted licenses, which we would call open weight in the AI space. Kind of source viewable if you want in the broader open source software space. And there was a huge shift, and the models that were available went from, oh, these are pretty good, to, oh, this is actually competitive with some of the models that state-of-the-art firms like Anthropic and OpenAI are serving. Not quite frontier models, like we didn't have anything Fable level on the open weight side, but they were finally to the place where you could actually host a model that was fantastically effective. And that specifically the model that launched that made us go, okay, we need to start doing this locally, is DeepSeek V4 Flash. And so Vic and I had been thinking about this and chatting about it for a bit, decided to take the dive and get 2 NVIDIA DGX Sparks and start with a cluster of 2, because that was the minimum size you needed to run DeepSeek V4 Flash in a performant way, at least at that point. You can run it on 1 quite well now, but at that point, that was what you needed. And so that was the real start of this journey. And for those who don't know, like you can, I think, often think of self-hosted AI and you're like, oh God, it's going to be this like data center in my living room or something. How am I actually going to host this? But the Sparks, and we'll get into other hardware, GPUs, that sort of thing later. But the Sparks themselves are actually they're like Mac Mini sized. They're absolutely tiny. They are beautifully built. Like all aluminum chassis, really, really nice front grille. Like they're just really, really well thought out and built. And each one has 128 gigs of unified RAM. So the same kind of idea as modern Macs, where you have a unified pool of RAM for the CPU and the GPU. Same idea here, where there's a simple CPU and then a massive GPU in these, and then a bunch of unified RAM for them to share. And the nice thing with the Spark specifically is that if you want more than 128 gigs of RAM, you can actually cluster them together over 200 gig network ports that they have in the back. And so you can get 2, you can just connect them together with the 1 cable, and you suddenly have 256 gigs of VRAM with a specific hardware setup that's optimized for running AI, which is the way that we kick this off, and is something that is very, very, very quiet and runs cool and can easily be run in your house, which was a nice way to start for us for sure.
So I want to dive in a couple of questions there. Why the DGX Spark, and how much does one of these run you?
Yeah, so the Spark itself, MSRP is 4K for each one, which I know that sounds like an insane amount, and it is. Like, I think something that I'm really excited for is probably in the next 4 or 5 years, AI specific hardware to come down in price. Right now it's going up in price. It's a little bit of a painful time. Like, I think we spent $4,600 each for these, which is the kind of going rate right now. But they're about 4 to 5K each, depending on where you are in the world. And the reason why these specifically, because you can run AI models on anything, and you can run them on a CPU with a little bit of RAM. If you have 8 gigs of RAM, there are some small models that you could run that way. It's not going to be fast, but you can run it that way. You can run it on a regular gaming GPU, especially if you have a higher end one with more VRAM. If you have one with 16 gigs of VRAM or more, you can run quite performant models. But if you want to run something larger, and you want to run something specifically that's going to be more intelligent and that's going to do a better job on long horizon tasks, like a broad project that you're working on, or a large code base that you need to scan, which is specifically why we needed this, you need a lot more RAM. And so the Sparks offer for 4K, 5K, they offer a really good amount of VRAM and a very much AI optimized hardware setup that works really well for this. It's much more performant for our specific use case than Macs as well. I know a lot of people have been running like Mac Studios, like Vic started with those, but these work better for that, because if you want to run the bigger models, you have to have enough VRAM or RAM generally to fit the entire model in, or else you're going to have very, very terrible performance. So like DeepSeek is just the right size that I can easily fit DeepSeek V4 Flash into the VRAM on the 2 DGX Spark cluster, and have enough KV cache, like basically memory or context. You can think of it that way, where I can do very large, long horizon tasks on it without running out of VRAM. So that was the reason for the Sparks over like a GPU rig. But there's definitely pros and cons to each that we can dive into a little bit as well.
So do these come pre-installed with like an operating system? Like, presumably you're running all this headless. Like, talk us through that side of things.
Yeah, so under the hood, they run basically a custom NVIDIA fork of Ubuntu. So they are at their core basically a Linux box that's specifically built around this idea. So the OS has everything you need to get started. When you power them on, they launch a Wi-Fi hotspot that you connect to from your phone or your laptop, and it guides you through the initial setup process. It downloads updates and does the initial reboot, and then you're off to the races. They have, just like a mini PC, they have an HDMI port on the back. They have Ethernet. They have USB-C. So you can like run it on your desk and plug it into your monitor and be able to actually manage and set it up that way, like with a display. But since I'm going to run them headless anyways, they're going to be plugged into a switch in another room. I didn't want to bother with that, so I just set them up with those Wi-Fi hotspots, and then they're plugged in via Ethernet. So then I can just SSH in and do everything that I need via SSH. Although in this day and time, most of the stuff I'm doing, I'm not doing manually. I'm having AI set up and manage my AI for me, which is a big part of what made this possible and much, much faster.
So you and quickly moved to 2. What was what helped make that decision? Was it that you had your eye on a specific model and one machine just wasn't going to cut it?
Wasn't it 2 to 4?
Yeah, it was 1 cluster to 2 clusters. So we started with
right.
2 Sparks right at the beginning, clustered together. And then we just added, literally this week, we added the second cluster. So there's a lot of different ways you can approach it. For us specifically, with the security scanning that we're doing, we benefit a lot by being able to run multiple jobs at once. Like, the core of what we do on the security side is we're doing nightly scans of all open PRs at their latest state, so we can catch security issues before they're actually even introduced into the code base, and tell our devs about them, give them specific remediation steps, basically catching things before they would ever even be able to be released to the public. And then we also do weekly scans that are entire repo scans with no context to try and discover new or missed vulnerabilities in the broader code base, things that have been pushed into dev that are potentially going to end up in the next release. We obviously want to catch those early as well. And then on top of that, we do scans specifically against the tagged branch before we do a release so that we can have a third layer of verification to make sure that we're not introducing something unexpected from a security standpoint, or that no outside contributor has snuck something in, all of the normal security stuff that we need. And that's a lot of things to be scanning and doing at once. So really, we needed better concurrency. DeepSeek V4 Flash is actually really, really, really good at security scanning if you do multiple passes as well. So every time we're scanning anything, we're scanning it 3 times with no shared context between the 3 scans, and then deduping and combining the scan results of each. And so when you think about that, we're scanning every PR 3 times a night. We're scanning the whole repo, which our repos are very large, and upstream repos as well, at least once a week, and every tagged release. That's just a lot of jobs that we have to run. So the scale up from 1 Spark cluster of 2 Sparks to 2 Spark clusters of 4 Sparks total allowed us to double how many jobs we could run at once, rather than running a bigger model, which we will do probably more when we get to 8 Sparks, I would guess. We could do now, but would take a big performance hit. Right now, we're running 2 replica clusters. So basically, it's 2 separate clusters that we tie together with a router so that whenever you go to hit it, you get automatically routed to whatever cluster's least used. And that let us double how many jobs you can run at once. So right now, we're doing 8 different tasks at once with full 1 million token context and really, really good speed.
You've kind of, in a roundabout way, already just answered it, and I already know the answer to this, I think, but I want to like dive into the economics of this a little bit. So you're what, like the better part of $20,000 in? Is that a fair, quick math?
Yeah.
So that is 100 months of Claude Max subscription. So where do you see that's the $200 a month one, by the way, which is a lot of usage. Where do you see the ROI coming in for this? And did that factor in, or was it kind of a bit more of a wing it decision? And it turns out, because I've obviously seen some of your tweets, that this is a very good decision for some of the reasons that I'm sure you're about to go into.
Yeah, let me see real quick if I can share my screen without doxing something. Hold on, let me try this. Because I think this would be helpful. Yeah, go ahead.
While you're doing that, I was just thinking as well, outside of just the maths, isn't there also an element of you're running all of this locally and therefore you're not feeding Claude with it, and that might be a better thing for your security? So like there is obviously like the raw number of it's 4 times this thing, and that compared to the monthly, but that must be a massive win for Cake.
Yeah, there's really there's 3 key ingredients that go into making this decision.
Whoa.
Yeah, perfect.
All right, Tony Stark. Fucking hell. Check this guy out.
Again, I did not make this. So this specifically, before I answer your question, this specifically is a Grafana dashboard that's using stats that we pull from our live cluster. This dashboard itself was actually built by another community member in the local AI space who's been doing really, really cool work on the monitoring side. So I took and adapted his. But I had set up all the Grafana and Prometheus side for actually collecting this data before that. But to answer the broader question, so like, where's the break-even point? I think there's 3 key things that often get overlooked when thinking about like, oh, you could just buy the subscription, you'll save money. One, and I think something that people are finally starting to understand, those subscriptions are massively subsidized. And the amount of tokens, the amount of inference you're getting for your subscription is way more than the amount that you're spending. That is not going to last forever, and that is already quickly changing. So there's been a lot of people noticing that subscription specifically to Claude and OpenAI, their limits haven't said that they've changed, but they feel like they're getting a lot less work done before they actually hit limit caps. People are begging on Twitter all the time for limit resets, and trying to get more out of their subscriptions. And that's because as these companies scale up, as they aim to actually become profitable, they're going to need to get a much better amount of profit per token that they're sending out, instead of doing this at a loss subsidized subscription model. So the amount that you get for subscription is going to continue to go down, not up, from everything we can tell, at least among the US frontier labs. The second part of that answer is there are just huge advantages to running this yourself on-prem from a privacy and sovereignty perspective. Like specifically for us, we're able to do things like build, execute, and validate proof of concept executions against vulnerabilities that I wouldn't do if I was trusting Claude or ChatGPT with this. I wouldn't want to give them sensitive info on findings that we have, or even give it actual seed phrases with money to play with, to actually do tests or do QA testing of features before we release them. Like, there are privacy benefits to this. The second is that a lot of the best security scanning that's available today is not available through ChatGPT or Claude. And accessing these models would normally require going to, like, using DeepSeek's API, which is an API served out of China, and obviously not something from a privacy or freedom perspective that would be ideal for us to be sending everything out to. But the third thing as well is that this allows us as a company to do much longer running and extensive tasks than we would ever do if we were paying API prices for this. Like, none of the stuff we're doing you can do through a subscription, or at least not easily or well, because you're not allowed to use your subscription via API through something like Pi or through a lot of the other harnesses. You have to use Claude Code, or you have to use ChatGPT codecs. And this allows us to build things that we would just never be able to do, like a Slack bot that we have in our Slack, where any engineer, after they build something, can just type /QA, a PR number, and ask a bot to actually run automated QA through every step of whatever flow they're testing, send screenshots, send logcat, give info on every step that it tried, let them know if it failed or succeeded. Things that actually running through Claude's version of that, which is Claude Tag, are horrendously expensive, like hundreds of dollars per run. We can now do for free. We're just paying energy. You can see that since we bought this cluster, since I set it up and started collecting, we've spent $6 on electricity. Yes, we spent $20K on the initial cost of hardware, but if we had been running these scans with Opus 5, which is the minimum we would be running with if we were using one of our existing subscriptions, we would have already spent $3K on AI usage so far in 1 week. 1 week. And that is only going to scale up because we've only just gotten our security harness really optimized for this specific setup and been able to move off of other subscriptions and using OpenRouter, that sort of thing. So it is going to be an easy break even, I think, but that is only going to become even more clear as the subscriptions that we do have access to become more and more neutered, as these frontier labs need to find profit somewhere to satisfy investors.
Wow. I had no idea it was going to be that quick of a turnaround. You know, if you extrapolate that out to where you would meet, you know, the 20K outlay and, you know, a couple of bits of change for some electricity, it's not going to take long at all, right?
Yeah, and it will differ per person. Like, obviously, this is a very different workload than maybe you would be doing if you're just kind of vibe coding stuff here and there and managing your self-hosted infrastructure and that sort of thing. Like, you're not going to want $20K worth of hardware for that. That wouldn't actually make any sense for you. Yeah. But even like OneSpark can run this model and run it quite well. And that's something that you could use to serve yourself, your friends and family, and Uncle Jim AI in a way that's perfectly privacy preserving. And you can never hit token limits. As long as it's online, you can serve tokens 24/7. No limits, no issues with that. And do it in a way where you can ask things that you wouldn't ask otherwise. You can feed it data like personal photos and information about your family to do something cool for your wife, for instance, that you would never do to Claude. You would never give it private photos of your kids, but you can do it because it's running on-prem and it has no access to the outside world. So there's a lot of other things that get opened up by it. But yeah, it's definitely a different scale. Like, we're obviously going to be using way more tokens as a company than you would ever be using on your own. So maybe the break even looks a little bit different there, but maybe that's where we can get into like the different levels of hardware that's available too, because you don't have to go straight to a Spark. There are other models you can run on lower end hardware that are going to be good enough for the regular day-to-day usage for a lot of people as well.
Before we get into the different types of hardware, I'm just interested, like for our own purposes at Ungovernable, obviously what you're doing is more like pen testing and like shadowy supercoder stuff. For someone like me who needs to do a lot of design work, image gen, editing, audio stuff, visual stuff, do you know what the open weight models are like, or have any insight into whether those run as well as the kind of pay monthly subscription types? Because I'd be very interested in doing this, A, from like a privacy perspective, because it all gets a bit complicated, but B, just being able to have these things running overnight and dial things in to how we work a little bit more.
Yeah, that side of things. So I will caveat with the fact that I don't do any of that side of things with AI generally. So it's not an area of expertise, but from the circles that I run in now that I'm an AI influencer, I have heard really, really good things about specifically running a model that just dropped last week called Minimax M3, which is
I've heard
open weight.
Minimax is good.
Yeah, I've seen really, really, really good content coming out of it, and it's people generating that content on Spark specifically. I think probably like a 2 Spark cluster would be ideal for really good performance. I think I saw that you can run it on one and run it pretty well. And again, if you're not time constrained, like if you can just kick off jobs and let them run while you do other stuff, you probably don't need a larger cluster. But that model specifically, I've been hearing really, really good things about for image and video gen, like long form videos as well. A ton of really good visual content creation stuff there. So that is definitely a side that is coming along at the same time, and it seems like at the same pace. Like even Minimax, I've heard are coming out with their next model, M3.1 or something, very soon as well, which is going to be even an improvement over that. And as far as I know, remain at the same size and be something that's very self-hostable on something like a Spark.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And even like smaller models like Quinn 3.8 27B, which the 27B refers to how many parameters there are. It needs like 17-ish gigs of VRAM or RAM to be able to run pretty well. That's something like you could run on a consumer level GPU. I mean, you'd need a higher end one, something like a 4090 or a 5090. So quite expensive these days, but that would be really, really fast and be good at that kind of thing too. But it sounds like from what I've heard that Minimax M3 is really the state of the art in the open weight image and video generation side, and something that I've seen people run, and I've seen people run it. I know there's a recipe for running it on 2 Sparks alongside DeepSeek, so you can still get the best of the coding and general AI usage from DeepSeek, and then fire off jobs via Minimax M3 at the same time.
That's exactly what I was just about to ask. Was, most of my work is like visual audio stuff, but then I do need to do normal stuff. So that would be ideal then if you could run both.
Yeah, I think you definitely can. I'll have to dig it up and I'll try to send it to you, because one of the people I follow has been working on that, but it's pretty crazy.
Okay, I'm glad I've been eating salad then. Great. Cheers, mate.
Is salad like the British version of eating ramen when you're poor, or like what's the? I've never
salad's even cheaper. Salad's even cheaper because ramen you have to actually buy or shoplift. And if you want salad, you can just go and pick it or grow it in your garden. So it's the cheapest of cheap.
That's true. I picture Max like just going out and grazing. It's just
like the
way he
tortoise.
eats every day. Yeah,
a cow in a field.
Not far off, mate.
I want to go into the setup a little bit more. Like you mentioned, it's quite simple. You just plug it in, give it some internet and some power, connect to the hotspot, and then you're kind of away. Choose your model, obviously, and then you're away to go. Obviously, you're using this in a power user setting, and you're not the only user of the cluster that lives at your house, right? I presume the whole Cake team are using that. So walk us through that. Like, is that, in like a private network, or how is everybody else in Cake benefiting from this cluster as well.
Yeah, for sure. So the first thing that I should have mentioned a little bit before too is like after you do that initial setup, obviously then you need to actually deploy the model. There's a lot that goes into that. You need a router that's going to serve it, something like the LLM. There's a lot of other things that go on top, but the really nice thing, and this is like if you've been in the self-hosting space, or even I'm sure this kind of stuff happens in the mesh to Dell and the Bitcoin space, like people who do this stuff for fun and explore, they publish the work that they do and they open source it. And so I had already found a really good recipe, which is basically just like a run book of how to deploy the specific model I wanted on the specific setup that I had, by someone named Maya AI, who's a Bitcoiner and Monero person and a Cakewallet user, which is super cool. She's popping up in the local AI space like crazy right now. But she had already made this recipe and published it. So I had just set up a plan using Claude because that was the AI I had at the time. I had set up a plan for cutover day one. I'd already downloaded the model weights. I had everything ready locally. And so I literally deployed DeepSeek V4 Flash on these two Sparks while I made dinner, ate dinner, and got the kids down for bed. And then when I was done getting the kids down for bed, I had DeepSeek V4 Flash serving at home. I didn't really have to do anything. I think I had to answer Claude's questions twice, and then I had the entire cluster spun up. And that's one of the really beautiful things here is like the actual barrier to entry of deploying this and managing it is quite low because of how AI helps to improve it. Like even I'm running constant self-improvement jobs on the cluster that work on fixing itself, and that I use it to deploy monitoring to improve it. I used it to deploy all of this Grafana dashboard that you see by just telling it, hey, this repo is awesome. I really want this dashboard. I already have these data sources. You're going to need to add a few more, figure it out. And it was able to deploy it all and get it set up and working properly. So that is a huge part of this, is the actual setup itself is getting much easier. And the community around this is awesome. It reminds me a lot of the early days back when I was doing custom Android ROMs a long time ago now. It seems like a lifetime ago. But it's the same kind of feel where it's like a community of people who just want to publish and talk about the fun things that they've been doing. And it makes it way easier for everybody else to be able to get started. As far as like how this is actually served, so it's really straightforward. So I already have been self-hosting stuff for many years. So I already have a good self-hosting setup. So I'm just exposing the VLLM router via Trafic, which is a Docker reverse proxy essentially. And any of the team can hit it, but it's API key restricted. So I just create API keys as teammates need it, and they can hit it directly. You could also, obviously, you could set this up over something like Tailscale if you wanted to. I didn't mind my teammates being able to hit the stuff I'm hosting at home because the cluster's at home. So I didn't have a problem with that. And if you do Tailscale, specifically in a work environment where you're often also using VPNs, it can be a little bit of a mess on some OSs. So I didn't want to introduce that headache. So yeah, quite simple. Just an API key that each person has. Again, you don't have to necessarily know exactly how to configure this. You can just say to Claude, hey, add this endpoint to my Pi install or to OpenCode or whatever. Give it the API key and it can plug it in. So that part is actually quite straightforward and not complex because it's just served in an OpenAI compatible API format. So literally any harness can connect to this and use it. It's not anything super custom or specific.
That makes sense. All right. Well, the next part of the minefield for me, generally speaking, if I was to walk down this route, would be, obviously hardware is one of the main gating factors of what you can run in terms of models and sizes and capabilities and stuff. Obviously, that's the biggest kind of primary factor essentially. But let's assume that you have some beefy hardware and it's, one Spark or a cluster of Sparks. How do you then go and decide which model you're going to run? Which set of parameters does it have? Is it going to be quantized? Like there's so many different, you talked about KV cache and things like that. Like how did you navigate that journey? Because that's where I always become unstuck.
Yeah, the first part is I'm a weirdo and I really like diving into rabbit holes like this and learning completely new things. So I've just been absolutely loving that side, getting into the technical details, following the new model releases, learning all about what all of these different terms mean. So I'm going to have gone deeper than most people who would self-host this would or should go. Like there's not a lot of reason to learn exactly what a KV cache is and why it works and why it's necessary for the average person. But I think the thing that also is way easier than it seems at first is picking a model, because picking a model is as simple as if you already have hardware and you're just trying to run something on your hardware, you just need to figure out how much VRAM or RAM do I have. And that's going to limit what you can actually run. Like for instance, if you have, let's say you have a gaming rig, you already have a gaming rig with a 5090 and an NVIDIA 5090. You can easily run any of the 27B, so 27 billion parameter models, things like Quinn 3.8, 27B. You can run that easily in VRAM with a good sized KV cache and have a really good performant experience. If you have something like a Spark, I mean, you have way more options, because I can run anything from a very small model to a much larger model because of the amount of VRAM that I have. But that's a side where it's also getting much easier as the local AI space takes off. Like it seems like really in the last 3 to 6 months, the space has absolutely exploded and gotten much more complete. So like even there's a new site that I've been playing around with and got into early called local.ai. And the whole goal of it is that you tell it what hardware you have, and it tells you what models are possible to run and how they compare in terms of intelligence, speed, content generation, like what each thing is good at. And they do their own benchmarks, and other people can recommend models as well. You can see what the people that you follow or keep up with are running. Like you can go to my profile there. You get to see that we have 4 Sparks running DeepSeek V4 Flash. It'll be, I think, a really good hub for that. So that's something that I'm excited to see as well. They just launched and are expanding that side. But the other one is just like when you got into Bitcoin, just like when you got into self-hosting, you find a good community and you ask questions. And that's a fantastic way to learn. And you'll meet people who are running specific models, and they can give you feedback on why you should or should not run that and what works for this use case. And, oh, should you buy new hardware, or can you get by with what you already have? Like that side, a real part of it is a community. And I've been really impressed and enjoying the local AI community lately, because it feels like a lot of the best parts of the freedom tech space and the cryptocurrency space and the self-hosting space kind of merging into one in a really fascinating way. So that it's something we're just getting plugged in. I think will be the best fit for figuring out what exactly is right for you, or just asking somebody. Like if you have hardware and you're curious, like just shoot me a message or post on Twitter and tag me, or like that. There are lots of people I'm sure would be willing to answer those questions and help out.
We've got Sovereign Logos in the comment on X saying what local AI community is recommended. I think you mentioned the domain, but let's just go back over it. Or if there's multiple, let us know.
Yeah, so I don't have I'm not like in a Telegram group or a Discord or something. I don't have time for group chats to just kind of deal with sorting through them and finding what's useful for me. So most of the community I found is on X, and then that local.ai site is a really good resource as well. So I first got kind of connected into the space because there's a guy who goes by Sero, 0x SERO on Twitter. And he did a podcast actually with Alex Gladstein from the HRF, and did some stuff at Presidio Bitcoin. He's been kind of starting to get connected into the Bitcoin space. And so he was kind of like my gateway. And then I just started following a bunch of people that he talked about or that he recommended. And that kind of started the network of local AI stuff for me on X. That's a good idea, though. I should probably post some good follows that I found after this and help people find good community, because there's a lot of really, really good people doing work in there.
All right, so I want to, in a second, I'm going to take us back to basics so that people can get some ideas on how they can test this out in a bite-sized way. But before we do that, you guys, you've got your cluster up and running. You've jumped through all the hurdles. You've done all the network. The Cakewallet team can access it, even though it's at your house, which is great. And you seem to have coalesced on a model that you're happy with. How do you compare that to, in terms of benchmarking and performance, compared to the latest frontier models? Like, are you getting Fable equivalent outputs? Surely, I'm guessing you must have done some comparisons there. What's that been like?
Yeah. I mean, it's going to heavily depend on the model you're running. So I'll just specifically talk about what we're running, which is DeepSeek V4 Flash, which is a recent model. They had it in preview for a few months, and then they released the final version. I think it was July 31st they released it. So again, very, very recent, and there's been massive shifts in the model space even since then. And it looks like there's about to be another massive shift as of some new stuff that just came out last night. So this space moves really, really quickly. But where we're at right now with DeepSeek, I would say the raw performance, like in terms of intelligence, is somewhere between a Sonnet 5 in Claude and an Opus 5, leaning a little bit more towards the Opus 5, but not quite as good. So it's definitely not Fable level, but it is more than good enough to accomplish the vast majority of tasks a regular person would have. And what I have found is the absolute best way to use this is if you have a very large task that you need to do, or you have a large project, or you have a large code base you need to work with, the best pairing by far, right now at least, until the models you can run at home become Fable level and greater, which they absolutely will. Like, we're already getting very close to that, like GLM 5.3, which you can run on 4 Sparks, which I know is still a lot today, but is going to keep coming down. That model is legitimately Fable level in many ways. With DeepSeek, the best approach that I've found, and this is something I've been playing around with and just published a plugin for the harness I use, Oh My Pi, yesterday actually for this, is to actually pair a state-of-the-art large model, something like Kimi K3 or GLM 5.3 that you have API access to. So that could be via OpenRouter, that could be via Venice, that could be via NanoGPT. Pair that just as an orchestrator and planner with your local AI model as the actual worker that does all of the grunt work, that actually implements everything, that does all of the research, and that just provides output back to the orchestrator to manage and to handle. And that pairing of combining a like Fable level orchestrator with a locally run and thus free, you're not paying per token worker, gives you essentially all of the performance of a Fable level for everything plan, because Fable is actually finding and telling the workers to fix any issues that they make. And you spend drastically less. So you can spend just a little bit on the API subscription that you're using for the large model Kimi K3 or GLM 5.3, and then do 95% of the work with your local worker. And I think that's the model that people are going to use in the short term until we can self-host even more easily these very large models that are good at long horizon tasks. But even that, you only need that for like very advanced stuff. Like, I'm never touching that for any of my self-hosting, for any of the show planning I'm doing, for a lot of the work that I'm doing. I'm just using DeepSeek directly. I don't need even the orchestration piece for that. And it handles those jobs really beautifully. But when you need that tier up, you have something like that, and you can still make the most of your local models at the same time. So that's kind of where I see it fitting in. But like I said, this space is changing so frequently that even like DeepSeek is going to become kind of outdated soon. This is a 21-day-old model, and rapidly the space is changing, and better options are coming out, and are only accelerating at this point as well.
Nice. All right. Well, let's take a step back and let's look at how people can get a taste of this without shelling out, $4, $8, $12, $16, $20,000. And obviously they're not going to get the same level of performance that you and your cluster are going to have. And it also depends heavily on what they want to do with AI. So I know there's a lot of variables, but let's say somebody wants to, they like the sound of this and they want to dip their toes in before they make maybe a big investment into some proper hardware. Like, where would you advise they start? What are some reasonably priced hardware, assuming that they don't already have something that they could repurpose to kind of get their toes wet and see what this is all about?
Yeah, that's the really nice thing here is like I mentioned earlier in the show, you can run local AI on pretty much anything. Obviously, the performance is where it's going to differ greatly. I would say if you already have a gaming computer at home, you already have everything you need to at least try out local AI and get a good feel for what it can be like. If you have especially a higher end gaming PC, like an NVIDIA 3090 and up, like a 3090, 4080, 4090, 5080, 5090, you're going to be able to run really, really good models in a very performant way, because you can run like that latest Quinn 3.8 27B model, which is fantastic. Like it'll do all of the kind of Hermes OpenClaw style stuff, all of the smaller coding tasks that you would have at home, all of the automation. It's going to knock all of that out of the park. And it's actually going to be very, very fast. If you have a good GPU that you can fit the entire model into VRAM with, it's going to be actually more performant than the Sparks. I think that's something that also people like in the local AI space, people are always fighting about, like, do you buy a GPU or do you buy a Spark? They're very different things. Like you buy a Spark when you want to run very large MOE, called Mixture of Experts models. So things like DeepSeek V4 Flash, things like GLM 5.3, things where you need a large amount of VRAM. Like even for DeepSeek, which I would say is the smallest, like highly intelligent model, you need 256 gigs of VRAM. Like you need a lot. You would never be able to get that by stacking GPUs unless you're going to spend a massive amount of money. Like you'd have to buy 4 NVIDIA RTX Pro 6000s, which would be like $60,000 right now to be able to run those in a GPU style setup. And that would be much, much faster, but that's a lot more money. That's 3-4 times the money. So I think that the best starting point for people is obviously if you have a gaming PC, great. If you don't, you could build one and get something like a used RTX 3090, which is going to be like $600, $800. And that will serve those really good small models like the Quinn 3.8 one that I mentioned in a really good, fast enough way for home, like in a speed that would be enjoyable and at a quality that would be enjoyable. And just like the rest of the space, those models are getting drastically better. It feels like almost every day at this point. And there's a big focus on small models becoming more performant as AI labs are trying to get these to work well on phones, on laptops at smaller scale, which a GPU can serve much, much, much quicker. So that's probably the best starting point, is something like an NVIDIA 3090 to start. The best kind of bang for your buck is if you can do it, getting a 5090 and building a simple rig with a 5090 GPU. That's going to give you plenty of VRAM for all of the small models, and it's going to be like wicked fast. Very, very, very fast. It's going to feel probably faster than any API usage you would be doing. And again, we'll serve models that are plenty good for home use. So there's kind of like, you can like ladder up and pick what you want. Obviously, start small, start with whatever fits within your means. But it can also be something like, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a world where friends and family pool together to build a rig that they can all use. Like maybe not right now. I don't have friends and family who care that much about local AI yet, at least. But I could see that being a world where you can, like, this is a really, really easy thing to Uncle Jim. You can expose this easily, do API keys, and share the model, and you're getting much, much better kind of return on investment the more you're using it, because you're only paying for electricity, you're not paying per token. And so I could see a world where people are like pooling funds to have someone host the AI for them, and then none of them need a Claude or ChatGPT subscription anymore, and they can all use that local setup and have better privacy, have no usage limits, and have really self-sovereignty.
That's something I've been wondering about a lot. I think I brought it up in the last couple of episodes, actually, is I wonder whether like a Meshtadel or a mining mafia or both of them merged together, sharing a couple of like self-hosted models could work, and like how that would work in terms of privacy, because you have a group of people who probably going to want to use this kind of stuff. We can get access to cheap power. We could pool in together potentially, but would it be a privacy risk, as an example, if someone's like, if you're running this at home, then you're okay to put family photos on, or projects that you might not share outside of your family, or elements of your self custody with Bitcoin or Monero or whatever else you're doing. If you're then feeding that into a shared piece of hardware, is it then going to leak out and cause problems because other people are using it? Does that make sense? Because it's like, it's a trusted network of people, a few hundred people, maybe 500 people who might use it. You trust them to some extent, you're close closer to some than others, but you're not going to trust them as much as your wife and kids. So how does that work? Does it leak?
Yeah, I mean, you'd basically be in the zero data retention approach, which is pretty common in the AI space if you're paying for API. Like if you're using something like NanoGPT or Venice, a lot of the models you can get access to are not end-to-end encrypted, where they could see what you're doing, what prompts you're putting in, but they have a promise of zero data retention. You'd be in basically that same position. I mean, I definitely see a future where the hardware we can run this on also has trusted execution environments, and we can do perfectly end-to-end encrypted multi-user setups. That's not where we're at right now. So you are still trusting the operator to not log prompts and log that sort of thing. But you also have to think it's a little different. It's not like you're using someone else's Nextcloud, for instance, and you're just dumping all of your family photos into it. And they can just look at it whenever they want. It would be much more complex because essentially you're streaming prompts and info to it, but the model's not storing that. None of that's going on disk in the same way. And by default, none of that would be logged. But yes, a malicious operator obviously could see that. So you would have to make sure that it's someone who's trusted and doesn't have a reason to do that, and also is good enough from a cybersecurity perspective that they're not going to get pwned and someone else is monitoring that for some reason.
Yeah.
But I think in the vast majority of these cases, that's a totally fine trust model for this specific use case, and even better than most of the other Uncle Jim stuff where you would be like blatantly trusting them with your data at rest. Right now, you're really just trusting them with your data in transit, and you can limit what exactly you're revealing to it as well, if you are really concerned about that. But yeah, you basically get that kind of like, I'm trusting you not to log VPN style promises.
Infinity divided by 21 isn't the problem that you can only have one user at a time?
No, so it definitely depends on the hardware that you're running it on. If you're running it like the bare bones base level, like you're running an old Mac laptop with just enough unified RAM to be able to run the model, like, yeah, you're probably not going to want to have 20 users running at a time. But like, for instance, our Spark cluster, we can, at our specific usage, we can serve 8 users at a time with no performance loss. And you actually, the way that these things work, you actually technically gain performance as you add users because of the way that they share cache and everything. Like when I'm using it as one user, I'm getting something like 70 to 90 tokens a second. When I'm maxing it out and using all 8 tasks to do a large job, I'm getting close to 200 tokens per second total output. So these things actually scale quite well. And for the more kind of common AI usage, and in our cluster specifically, you could easily do 16 at a time, if not more. But one of the really nice things about if you're doing this via GPUs as well is you can actually usually do a lot higher concurrency. So like if you're running a 27B model and a 5090, for instance, I think I've seen people serving like 32 jobs at once out of that. Don't quote me on that, but you can get quite high concurrency. And if you do, like, obviously the bigger the hardware, the more users you can serve. Yeah, you're not running one Spark and serving 500 people at once. That's not how it works. But these systems also queue well. So if you have, let's say you have something that can serve 8 tasks at a time and you have 15 people who you've given access to, they're not all using it at the same time 100% of the time. That's not how any regular person at least uses AI. They're doing little bursts where they ask a little question and it does a search job and it gives them back feedback. And those jobs can queue up. So if someone else is using it and there's no slot available for you yet, your messages just get queued and you'd wait for a few seconds until the other person's job finished. That sort of thing. It's just like any other kind of server. It'll handle the wait. If it can't handle that load at the time, it'll queue you up and you won't just get dropped or denied or something like that.
Sovereign Logos is back in the X chat saying, what's your take on the M5 Max laptops, the ones that have got 128 gigs of unified memory?
They're just so freaking expensive for the performance that you get out of them. If your main goal is hosting AI with them, they're not really the best tool for the job. They can work. So like if you already have one, or like your work will buy you a nuts maxed out MacBook or Mac Studio or something, yeah, you'll be able to run the models and you'll run them well. I think the main thing that I've seen and noticed in hosting these models on Macs versus on something like a Spark or a proper GPU rig is that they do pretty well on the decode speed side, so the side of actually processing info and giving you output. They are much slower when it comes to the pre-fill side. So if you have like a really large job or large code bases or large tasks that you're having it run, you'll be waiting for a while before the task actually starts compared to running it on a Spark. But I think if you're needing to run large models, I don't really know why. Like I would not prefer the Mac laptop specifically. The Mac Studios are okay, but they're also, you can't get them with high unified memory anymore, like 512 gigs plus. Theoretically, they're going to come out with a new one that will have 1 terabyte plus of unified memory, which that actually
I
might
don't
be
think
a really
they have the new
one,
chips in them either. I think only the laptop's got the new M5 chips, and the studios haven't yet.
Yeah, you're right. I think the new studio is supposed to have that one, but yeah, they've been lagging a little bit behind and are getting hit by this NAND shortage as well.
I have an interesting question. Like somebody wants to scale into this and they get themselves one Spark, and then they go away and they quickly hit their the capabilities of it. They want to run larger models, or they need more tokens per second or something, and they want to add another machine to their cluster. But by the time they get there, the industry, the hardware industry, moved on, or all the Sparks are sold out and you can't get any more.
Ooh, good one.
Can they get an equivalent machine or the next gen machine or whatever that is, and still chain it to the Spark and get something like the output that you guys are getting at Cake?
So it will depend a lot. I mean, the short answer is if you can build a very fast networking backbone between whatever the two devices are, the answer is yes. There's some really good experiments by I'm blanking on his last name, but he's another co-founder of Local.ai. Alex is his first name, but he's actually been working on exactly this problem and idea of basically, if you have one Spark, can you expand its abilities by connecting it to a Mac that you also have? And it's that exact idea of like, how do we allow merging different architectures into one shared pool of VRAM for hosting models? And so that's actually what he's been working on, and that's very nascent, I would say. Like, I don't want to guarantee that that'll be something that'll be really performant, but it definitely is doable. And there's actually already really good tooling for just pooling AI resources in general across a network. I think it's called, I was going to say EXO. I think that's the name of a different AI company right now. But there's a tool I'll have to dig up that basically allows you to do this, where you add each different unique device to a cluster, and you can serve models across all of them at the same time. But you'll always be limited by how much bandwidth you have between the devices. So like the reason the Sparks work so well when they're clustered is that they have 200 gig QSFP ports, like a special Ethernet port on the back, and you use a 200 gig cable between them, and that's a massive amount of bandwidth, and is enough essentially for their memory bandwidth to be pooled and not take a hit. Technically, you would take a small hit because their memory bandwidth is like 270 gigs per second, but it's a non-noticeable hit in real world usage. So that 200 gig connection is enough for that. But if you're doing something like the Mac to Spark setup, the Mac has at most a 10 gig Ethernet connection. I think the Mac Studios have 10 gig. And so you are going to take some loss to performance, but it technically could work. I think the thing that like I'm definitely hopeful for with the Sparks is if they do come out with like a Gen 2 that has 256 gigs of VRAM, as long as they have that same QSFP port, you can just connect them together. There's no, like, I'm sure that will be extensible. But if you're going like totally different architecture, like, oh, I have a gaming PC and a Spark, right now the ways that you connect those things are a little bit limited, but are getting better and better as we go. And there's also some cool work by a company called Tiny Labs, where they've made like PCIe stands, basically, where you can connect a GPU to some other system. So like you can actually have a Spark and you can get a GPU like a 5090 and connect it to the Spark and pool the resources over a very fast connection. So this is definitely, it's definitely a developing space. It's not something that's like guaranteed right now, but the Sparks specifically have really good stock right now from everything I've seen are not sold out and have not been taking the same price increases as GPUs in recent times, at least.
Awesome. Well, this is fast. We are at time, but I'm going to do many more shows like this, and I'm sure your experience is going to change over time as we get new models and additional hardware and stuff like that. So definitely something that we intend to kind of regularly check in with you on. But appreciate you sharing the insights as always, Mr. 4AI. And yeah, that brings us to the close of the show. So I'm going to wrap us up, and I hope everybody has a wonderful weekend, and we will be back for more Freedom Tech Friday goodness at the same time next week. See you all.
Thank you for listening to Freedom Tech Friday. To everyone who boosted, asked questions, and participated in the show, we appreciate you all. Make sure to join us next week on Friday at 9 a.m. EST and 2 p.m. London. Thanks to Seth, Max, and Q for keeping it ungovernable. And thank you to Cake Wallet, Foundation, and my NIM box for keeping the ungovernable misfits going. Make sure to check out ungovernablemisfits.com to see Mr. Crown's incredible skills and artwork. Listen to the other shows in the feed to hear Kareem's world-class editing skills. Thanks to Expatriotic for keeping us up to date with boosts, XMR chats, and sending in topics. John, great name and great guy, never change and never stop keeping us up to date with mining news or continuing to grow the mesh to Dell. Finally, a big thanks to the unsung hero, our Canadian overlord, Jordan, for trying to keep the ungovernable in check and for the endless work he puts in behind the scenes. We love you all. Stay ungovernable.